Sharon, thank you very much for coming in today and talking with me about the magazine.
Well, it's a pleasure, Amy, as always.
I'm getting flashbacks to my radio times. God. Right, so here's the first prompt. What do you think the impact of Black Lives Matter will be on diverse literature in the months and years to come?
Oh gosh, that's a big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, presumably we're both going to be answering these questions.
Yeah, well, we're just going to have a chat a bit, like.
Yeah, I mean, I personally,
yeah,
I just hope there is an impact on literature in the future, and it's not just now, let's all, I think that with some of the bigger publishing, mainstream publishing, and some of the bigger industry figures, it feels like, why has it taken this for you to start thinking that you maybe need to change something about the way you do things?
I know, exactly.
But okay, you do now realize that you need to change things, but actually what are you going to do that is about sustainable systemic change? Because it's all very well having little interventions and saying my inbox is open.
Or we've taken these steps and we're now diverse, when actually our complete staff are white and our boards are white. It's like, well, nothing's really changed apart from you've ticked your box.
I don't want to be negative, because I think there are some very well-meaning people out there, and there are some people who are now, and I don't think it's just because of Black Lives Matter, although this has really helped to amplify it in a global way. Helped to amplify kind of institutional racism, basically, as well as all the other forms of racism that we know exist. But and there has been, you do see little pockets of change. You see like really brilliant people having their voices heard. But it's whether that will translate into real long-term change, which will only happen, as you know, Amy, and as I know, if boards change, if commissioning editors change, if editorial staff change, if there has to be change on every level, basically.
And I think the thing that I've seen before actually Black Lives Matter was there being more sort of little indie publishers. We had one get in touch with, well, not in touch with us directly, but through New Writing, not through Myriad. They got in touch, Bad Forms. But kind of a new literary magazine for I think, what did they call it, black, Asian and non-white people. And I think stuff like that, where people are thinking, well, I think younger generations are thinking more along the lines of DIY, and kind of, but whether, as you say, we can keep these new initiatives and that young energy, and that they'll want to keep going to support, to be involved. But also I think, it shouldn't be, seeing change in publishing shouldn't be down to people working for free to make that change happen.
One, it shouldn't be down to people working for free. Two, it should be, I think it needs to be led by people who really understand what the challenges and the issues are. And it is great having the kind of DIY stuff, but 17, 18 years ago, I was working at Centerprise, which is a literature development project in Hackney, you probably know it, in Dalston. And we had a literary magazine called Calabash, which was for writers of Asian and African descent and their readers, was how we kind of talked about it then. And I was managing editor after Catherine Johnson and Khadija and people had set that up. And we were doing brilliant stuff, but there was never any funding, and this was, and if those sorts of projects got properly funded, things would be different, I think. And there are initiatives like Wasafiri and People Tree Press and Jacaranda. You know, there's some really good stuff out there, but these things need to be funded. You know, the money doesn't just need to now go to the big mainstream white-led organisations who are doing good, like putting a few black people in their pictures. So I hope there's change, and I think I'm optimistic. The thing about, you know, there's the Black Writers Guild, which is brilliant, and you know, I'm really pleased that a lot of black writers are getting the attention that they, you know, it has been a long time coming, basically, like Bernadine. You know, Bernadine has not just written this book out the blue, she's written loads of books. And Courtship Newland, and, you know, Catherine Johnson, who we've just mentioned. You know, there's Yvette Edwards, there's lots of writers who've been doing this for a long time. So it's great that they're getting some recognition now, as well as kind of the newer, younger models coming up. But, you know, there's lots of other underrepresented groups as well. So BAME is not an adequate term because it lumps everyone together, but actually, it's just about recognising that there are lots of stories and voices who are, you know, which are ignored or made invisible.
You know, and I think that the tipping point will be, you know, when the more that we put out and we publish authors of color, and, you know, the more that we can demonstrate there's actually demand, that people want to read these books, and that, you know, people of color do read. You know,
and not just that people of color do read. I think people who live in a multicultural Britain also don't just want to have, you know, they want to see the world reflected as the world they live in reflected in the books they read.
It's let's see.
No one wants just the same story over and over again, do they?
No.
Or the same characters, you know. Well, maybe some people do. I don't know.
How can we create a cultural change in the narrow traditions of publishing and make it more equitable?
Well, I think we've just kind of touched on that, haven't we? You know, it has to be systemic change at every level. You know, right from the intern to the commissioning editors and the publishing directors, really, and the boards, particularly the board.
I mean, it was quite interesting. I think when I had the idea for the anthology, it took me a long time to, the Hidden Sussex anthology. It took me a really long time to think it through and think, can we actually pull this off? You know, do we have the resources to create our own book? And I think I had a few people who said, oh, the Arts Council don't really like to fund books. They, you know, like they don't like to fund anthologies, and people weren't really sure about the whole anthology concept. But I do feel like I'm really glad that we did that, because that's helped us kind of think about how we can create some more opportunities, you know, working together with organizations like yourself. And people, you know, like we are starting to put, so right now at the moment through our C19 kind of skeleton program, we're doing a little bit of work around getting the book into reading lists in university. And that's going really well, actually. I mean, even though, you know, despite lockdown and everything being a bit unknown with what's going to happen with courses and stuff, people have been getting back in touch and saying, oh, we're really glad you got in touch. And, you know, so I think it's also, how do we, you know, how do we have support for, you know, that decolonizing academia sort of.
Exactly. And how do producers like you and literature development organizations like us, you know, what's our role in that kind of helping to or contributing to decolonizing the landscape, literary landscape, you know, not just the academic kind of curriculum, but it all needs to be joined up. And for me, that's really about amplifying, enabling writers of colour to develop and to have their work seen and heard and their voices seen and heard. And, you know, in terms of the anthology, it might be old-fashioned, but as a writer, you know, I know there's nothing really, that compares to actually seeing your story in a book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's great being online, and I know that it's brilliant that there are more opportunities for people to share and have their work seen, but there's nothing quite like seeing it in a book.
Yeah.
So, you know, and
Yeah,
they're hard to
very
distribute,
validating.
but yeah, but there's something about validate, you know, for a writer to feel quite validated that someone says you're in an anthology.
Yes,
That's
I
it.
know, I know, completely. And getting paid, you know, I think
Yeah,
paid opportunities to read, to have,
yeah,
you know, to be paid for your writing means,
yeah,
yes, you are a writer.
yeah,
You know, like I've been suggesting to everybody who contributed to the Hidden Sussex Anthology to sign up to the Society of Authors. You know, if you're already part of a union, you get that for free anyways,
yeah,
which, you
yeah.
know, kind of sort of find out about these things as you go along, and you're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, because it will help those writers to. I think this is something, I don't know whether it's particular to writers of colour. I think lots of writers
yeah,
find, you know, we're very self-deprecating. You know, we have very little self-belief. We're very low confidence, even though we have to present this different kind of veneer to the world, and you know, it is about feeling validated and being in a book, you know, or being kind of taken seriously by a producer or a project or an organization. And
mhm.
that allows you to feel like a writer, or to call yourself a writer, because someone else has recognized you as a writer. And
Yes,
that's extremely important to how you then go on with your creative practice, I think.
yes. And I know that, like, definitely the first time I got published in a book, that was, you know, really important. Um, again, which is why I really wanted to have the anthology, so that it might be people's first times, or it might be people's, you know, kind of, they've had, you know, like a lot
Yeah,
of us, you know, you have other priorities in life and you don't have that time to publish or to write or to
yeah,
whatever. And, you know, through family care, you know, caring for families,
yeah.
or illness, or just having too much
Having
work
to earn a living.
and a
You know.
living. Yeah, that real life stuff. And then you kind of think, okay, actually, I'm going to make the time for myself. And it can kind
Yeah,
of reawaken um, that
yeah.
impulse to be creative and to tell your stories.
I
What?
think it's interesting because I was talking to Delani, is it
Yes.
Delani?
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a mentoring session, and
Yes.
I was saying to her, you know, it's actually about, it's not just about giving yourself time or allowing yourself time. Now is the point to actually start demanding time for your
Yeah.
writing, because
Yeah.
you are a writer, you know,
Yeah.
and it's only when you start demanding it, you know, that people take you seriously.
Yeah.
But,
Well, I mean,
yeah,
this is a time, I think, for people to figure out what their demands are. I think it
yeah,
does go back to the Black Lives Matter,
yeah, yeah,
where if you don't
yeah.
speak
We've got,
out, if you don't speak out for yourself, somebody's going to come in and do it for you.
yeah, exactly. You've
Unfortunately.
got to, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
say it loud. Yeah, and I think that is one of the things about, um, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement and the recognition that that movement has had over the last few months is it's made a lot of us feel a bit more empowered about calling stuff out, about demanding
Yeah.
space and time to be who and what we are, whether that's writers or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So just kind of thinking about encouraging people to give it a go, especially
yeah,
people who want to identify as writers, and you know, for people to actually come to Covert. I mean, I know that, like, for myself, I just thought, I know what we need during lockdown. We need a literary magazine for people of color.
yeah,
I chose the name Covert because it's sort of, I kind of wanted to, it's a, I don't know if it's a bad joke because not everybody's getting it, but it's like, yeah, writers of color have been underground, but we're not going to be anymore.
yeah.
And
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad joke. I think, you know, actually, this is the way, you know, we hide ourselves. It's not just that we are made to be invisible, or our stories are not told. It's also, we're doing it kind of surreptitiously, you know, like we're doing something wrong because we think people aren't going to take us seriously, or that our stories aren't valuable. Really is what it is. It's all about value, and you know, if you're not getting
it's I wanted to ask you a question, actually. When did you decide to write your novel? I mean, and how long did it take you to do that?
Well, it took the first novel took I think I knew I wanted to write a novel when I was about 7 years old, really. But like we were saying, Amy, you know, life gets in the way, and also I didn't ever think I could be a writer. You know, it just wasn't within. It wasn't what people were in my communities. You know, it was like saying I want to be an astronaut. It's not what people like we did. So it was probably when I started, so I'd always kind of written secretly, you know, in that covert way. And then it was only when I actually started working at Centerprise in 2002, I think it was, that, and I was surrounded by writers, and I was seeing writers like Jacob Ross, who was teaching, you know, on courses that we were running, and I was seeing writers like Dreda Say Michelle, and you know, these sorts of things, and Andrea Levy, that I thought, shit, you know, I can do that. Not that I can be as good as those people, but actually they made me feel like actually people like us can also be writers, because they were writers. So then I did some short courses, and it took a long time for the novel to come, but actually it was because I started a creative writing course, and that was about demanding time. That was about saying to my family, my kids, and my workmates, and you know, writing was always on the back burner because everything else, there were other priorities like earning money and raising children and stuff. But it was about saying, actually, this is something serious in my life, as well as giving me the discipline to do it. So it was like starting a writing course, did that. But then it took a long time to get the novel published, and it was only when I had a short, I was a showcase writer in a report that was into the lack of diversity in the publishing industry. It was called Writing the Future, commissioned by Spread the Word. And I'm very proud to say Bernardine Evaristo selected my work to go into that report, which I only found that out recently, so I was very quick to find that out. But it was only after that you know, anybody was interested, because I'd got a lot of rejections from agents before them. But then the publisher kind of got in touch with me direct. So I don't have an agent, because agents didn't really, you know, didn't want me. They didn't, you know, because they just didn't.
They didn't think that they could make a profit.
My story didn't resonate with their lives, basically, was what it was. They just didn't see, and I've gone back to that word value, but they didn't see any value in me or in it. So but after that, I mean, the novel then took, I suppose all in all, the novel took about 4 years to write, that first one.
I've got about 3.5 or 4 written so far.
Novel. Wow. Have you sent them? Are they with agents and stuff?
No. I mean, because I think I wrote my first novel when I first moved to Brighton, and I did part-time care work for the first 3 years, because I really didn't want to work in an office. I felt like I had a previous experience where I was working in an office. It was really toxic, and I felt like I need to be outside of this framework. And obviously, the only work you can get when you were in Brighton, well, at that time, was care work. So I thought, this is cool, you know. So I'd go and do my, you know, I'd have time, you know, all day basically to write. So it took.
But it's exhausting work, care work. I mean, it's physically exhausting.
I mean, I had to stop after about 5 years, because I was just like, my back was having that kind of lower back pain from doing, but he did give me the time to write, and I was really happy I did that, because I wrote a novel, and I wrote a script, which I then made into a film. which
Oh,
I made
wow.
a low budget feature film. Yeah, which was a
Oh, I
lot of
didn't
fun.
know that.
Yeah, yeah.
Can we watch it? Can we see it
Yes, yeah,
anywhere? Is it?
actually, it's on Vimeo. It's very low budget, but I did have some really brilliant people working on it.
Yeah.
It was that time just before HD came out, so we did have a very good
Yeah.
camera, but it wasn't quite HD, which I think impacts the quality. I don't think I have the best quality version on Vimeo at the moment, but
Okay.
it looked
Oh,
good.
send me a link. I'd love to watch it.
Yes, yeah, it looked good when we premiered it. We had it took me about, so the novel I did send out to a few places, but the thing I had at the time was I had a writers group, and we used to meet in the pub down on the George pub on bottom of Trafalgar Square.
Right.
And a few of those guys read it, and I started, writing other bits of novels and stuff. And then it took 7 years to finish the film. We had it at the Sussex. Do you remember the Sussex Arts Club?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was such a brilliant place. I loved that venue.
Yeah.
I booked it out for 2 days. And
Yeah.
sold out both nights. It was really, it was fantastic. So, I do dabble in film, and I'm trying to work on an artist film at the moment to go with my short stories.
Right. Okay.
I think when we talk about carving time and stuff and commitment, that's the thing that is really important for me to finish. So, yeah, but yeah.
Well, I hope you get to see your novels. I mean, you need to. This is the time to resurrect them and get them out there. Well, now that the agents have, very kindly opened their inboxes to us,
or
for a limited period only.
Slide into their DMs or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think the thing, just getting back onto the literary magazine, I'm really keen for people to like apply, because we don't want perfect pieces.
Yeah,
we've got that mentoring element, and editorial feedback, which is going to be really valuable. I wasn't sure about, remember when we were thinking about the deadline?
Yeah.
Originally we're going to have like the 31st of October, but then I thought that leaves like only 1 month to try to finish off anything. And actually, why not send something that's, you've just written yesterday, send it in. Because if it's selected, you can I think up to 3 pieces of poetry, 3 short stories, and also we're taking artwork. So there's the 3 pieces, but they don't have to be the best pieces in the world, I think.
Because the selected writers will work with a mentor to polish those. And I think that's really important. And I think this thing about, if people don't identify as a writer, I don't quite know about that term itself, but the thing is, if you're writing, then you're a writer, and unless you start calling yourself a writer, no one else is going to think of you as a writer. So, and a writer, it's a journey. It's not a finished product. You're not you don't come out as a writer. Because we're, even those of us that are published, I know I'm at the beginning of my writing journey to some extent. My second book's coming out, but that feels like it's still early in my writing career, and I'm not young, so it feels great to be at the beginning of something as well.
Do you feel like you've got a lot more books inside of you?
I definitely do, and I know that each one will be, I will learn something, and hopefully I will improve, and it will, I will grow as a writer. And I'm thinking about book 3 quite seriously at the moment, and sort of planning how I'm going to get that done, basically, because it's going to be a lot of research for book 3, a lot more than the other 2.
Oh, wow.
And a historical research. So,
wow. Yeah. Umi's really good at that. So
I might talk to Umi, actually.
I don't know how she can keep it all in her head. I mean, she's gone off to India, to Italy to do her research, Pakistan. Ended up with on some tours with kind of people really high up in the military, and had to go on horseback expeditions.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm, yeah. Well, I'll talk to you about that another time. But
okay, no problem. Yeah,
yeah, because I know you're quite good about research as well, aren't you? You've got quite a lot of knowledge about research.
yeah,
You and Amy did a panel together at the Shoreham Word Fest.
yeah. Because I talked
Yeah,
about it from the No Place Like Home project,
yeah,
which was super intense.
yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, we didn't at the time when I was doing the interviews, I didn't know about tools like Otter to
yeah,
transcribe. So that's going to save me a lot of time now. I can just get all of my interviews transcribed
yeah,
for
yeah. It's
free.
great. Yeah, and technology is great in in helping us with our
Totally.
journeys as writers as well.